Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today's topic of the day is going to be about some of the worst worked matches in WWE history, as voted on by the man himself, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. I've been following Dave Meltzer for a very long time. I can't say all my 30 years, because when I was a kid I didn't read a lot of insider stuff. But over the years, I've respected this man and his journalistic integrity when it comes to professional wrestling and how he's in the know about so many things that other people aren't aware of. And, I swear, this guy gets no sleep because he's constantly, finding news related to professional wrestling and about the wrestlers themselves and covering things that other journalists won't cover. So, Dave Meltzer has mad respect from me. So, Wrestling Observer Newsletter's worst worked matches. Now, I'm not going to list every single one, and WWE, WWF did not always win worst worked match every year. I think it's called Worst Match of the Year. Since 2017 or 2018, they changed it up. So I'm just going to pick just a few here in chronological order, but we're going to skip around a little bit. Pardon me. So, when I talk about worst worked match, I'm talking about the absolute... not a snooze fest. It could be a snooze fest because it could be boring. Absolute atrociousness when it comes to a wrestling match. We all know that professional wrestling is very choreographed and it's scripted and there's a lot of theatrics involved. But yet you have to make it, as the performer, you have to do your due diligence to make it look as real as possible for the audience's sake. It's insulting if they don't even try very hard, and that's what I'm going to discuss here. And it's like some of these matches, they didn't try very hard, and it came off looking worse than what it was planned to be. So let's get into it, shall we? The first match brings us to 1993, Survivor Series from the Boston Garden that year. It was the Four Doinks, and Doink the Clown was not one of those Four Doinks. It was Mabel and Mo of Men on a Mission, joined alongside by Bushwhackers, Luke and Butch, all in Doink makeup. Clown makeup, whatever you want to call it, clown paint. And their opposition was Team Bam Bam Bigelow, with Team Captain Bam Bam Bigelow, Bastion Booger, Samu, and Fatu of the Head Shrinkers. Now, Doink and Bam Bam had already been engaged in a feud. Doink had just turned face, and he'd been playing tricks on Bam Bam, including having multiple Doinks interfere in matches. And this was dishonest advertisement because 4 Doinks were supposed to be Doink plus 3 other Doinks. And at this point, I think Matt Bourne was let go from WWF, so Ray Apollo, I believe, took over. Or Matt Bourne might have still been there, I'm actually not sure. But I'm not going to waste time looking that up right now. So Bigelow had had enough, and then he decided to bring his quartet against the quartet of Doinks. So, boy, were we in for a surprise. What a whirlwind it was when I heard Men on a Mission coming out with Oscar even was dressed as a Doink. Oscar, their hype man, their rapper, manager. And then, of course, followed by the Bushwhackers. So... it was a clean sweep, 4 against 1. All 4 men survived on the Doink team. And it was just, clownish and buffoonish every possible way conceived because, they were using a lot of props to get by. I remember one of the Bushwhackers was using a razor scooter in the ring, distracting Bigelow or Booger. And, they were doing all these, comedic things like, sitting on their heads and, squashing them. Or, Bastion Booger was doing this little dance trying to squash one of the Bushwhackers, and then I think, Mabel or Mo pulled him out of the way. Just little silly things like that. I felt like I'm watching, Looney Tunes or Cartoon Network on a Saturday morning. So, there was a lot of food involved, too, because, this was Thanksgiving Eve at the time, and so everyone was eating turkey carcasses, especially the Head Shrinkers and their manager, Afa. And rightfully so, because that was their gimmick. They're savages, completely. So... they had turkey carcasses. Bastion Booger was eating a banana. We had Bushwhackers on their razor scooters. So I think Samu got eliminated first, then Bastion Booger, and then Fatu. Poor Rikishi had to suffer through this match. Finally, Bam Bam got eliminated when they all dogpiled on him. And Vince McMahon and Bobby Heenan were calling the event that night, and McMahon made this comment, "Forget about Hanna-Barbera! Forget about... the Flintstones. This is pure entertainment here, folks, only from the World Wrestling Federation." I don't know if that's exact verbatim, but say what you will. So anyways, it's a dud of a Survivor Series match, and I'm big on classic Survivor Series matches. We're going to talk about another one in a minute, but I don't want to get too heavy on the Survivor Series stuff because that's going to take away from the point of this video, because that's neither here nor there. So, that was 1993's worst worked match of the year, which I agree with, and the next one isn't going to do much better because Doink has the honor yet again, but Doink is actually in this match. A year later, Survivor Series 1994, Clowns Are Us. Doink the Clown, followed by his three midget clowns, Dink, Wink, and Pink. I think Pink might have passed away, or was it Wink? They were just, independent contractor wrestlers who were midgets, and it's not like we had a juniors division yet, not till like 2006, so that was a little joke and a half. But anyways, we didn't have a lot of small guys, short guys competing on the roster, so this was kind of the only means for them to be in the World Wrestling Federation. Clowns Are Us was taken on the Royal Family, captained by Jerry the King Lawler and his quartet, his three midgets, comprising the quartet of Cheesy, Sleazy, and Queasy, and they were all dressed identically to Lawler with the singlet. Looks like a pair of pajama pants, that blue and white singlet he had with the crowns all over. Looks like little kids' choo-choo train pajamas. It was so ridiculous, but I guess Jerry Lawler didn't mind wearing it. So there was a lot of unfair advantages in this one, because you have two guys who are of normal height, and then you have six midgets in the match. Kind of reminds me of WrestleMania 3, Bundy and Hillbilly Jim and their midgets. So Doink the Clown was actually eliminated first, and therefore Jerry Lawler didn't actually serve a purpose in that match because, he's not going to go against the little guys here. It's like a mixed tag match where, you don't put a man and a woman against one another, at least not in WWE. So men against men, women against women, and you get how the rest of this goes. Kind of intergender, a mixed tag match, not really intergender because it's all one gender here. So the rest of the midget Doinks get eliminated, Dink, Wink, and Pink. But then after they win, Jerry Lawler, in his great heelish state, does not want Cheesy, Sleazy, or Queasy celebrating with him. Instead, he wants the victory all to himself. He's like, "Don't raise your arms, you little peons! This victory is for me! You wouldn't be here if I wasn't here! Just listen while I take in this victory so all these idiots can see what the true king I am." Something like that. Eventually, all six midgets plus Doink gather up on Lawler, and Lawler gets pie-faced. Great justice, served right. So that's probably the only good thing to come out of this. Otherwise, it's an atrocious match altogether. Another worst-worked match, yet again at Survivor Series with Doink. Sorry, Ray Apollo. Can't catch a break here. These comedic matches, they're not meant to be taken seriously, so let's keep that in mind. This is more for comic relief than anything else. We're going to fast forward a few years now to 1999. The Kennel from Hell match from Unforgiven that year. Al Snow versus the Big Boss Man, and Al Snow's defending his Hardcore Championship. The Kennel from Hell involves a lot of dogs, especially Rottweilers. So there was a traditional blue steel cage in the ring with a Hell in a Cell encompassing it on the outside. And the storyline was Al Snow's Chihuahua Pepper had been abducted by the Big Boss Man. I hate this story. I'm a big dog lover, so I hate storylines involving dogs, especially dogs being harmed, so it's going to be hard for me to get through. And then they create a storyline. I know he didn't really do it, but they pretended that he cooked the dog and served it to Al Snow, and I don't even like to rewatch that. It's very tasteless. I'm sorry, but sometimes wrestling does things that are tasteless, and we'll get into other stuff like that later on at another time. But so Snow wanted his revenge, and rightfully so, and so he decided to put up his hardcore title on the line, and so he made it so that Boss Man could get a taste of his own medicine. That was the storyline going into it. So all these Rottweilers are surrounding the ring with their trainers, and these are like attack dogs, that they use at police academies and such. It's my best dog bark, little Titus O'Neil. Titus would be proud. Anyways, back to the match. Snow and Boss Man. Snow's dressed in his street clothes. He's not in his traditional Job Squad sleeveless t-shirt, followed by the short tights, short trunks. He's in jeans, and he's got his wrists all taped up, ready to go. Boss Man's in his traditional SWAT team gear. The dogs did not pose much of a threat in that match, as they should have. They barked a little bit, and then they peed on the outside. They fucking peed outside the ring, and so the whole mat on the black mat on the outside is covered in piss while these two guys are having this atrocious match. I don't even remember the match, honestly. It's not like I just went back and watched it, but it's very forgettable. It's very dull. The cage wasn't even used all that much, let alone the Hell in a Cell. And I can't believe that we're even using this in the same context as Hell in a Cell. Snow, I think, won, and mercifully that match ended. So what else can I say about this match other than it sucked? That's plain and simple. And the dogs didn't do shit in that match. They probably made shit. But that's about as far as that went. And then, thankfully, the feud ended, and then Bossman went to another tasteless feud, which we're not going to get into right now. Let's go to a year later in 2000. This match also has the hardcore title, no less. King of the Ring 2000. Gerald Briscoe versus Pat Patterson for the hardcore championship. Patterson's the champion, and this is a hardcore evening gown match. In all seriousness, a lot of people know Pat Patterson was gay in real life. He was a closeted gay man. He didn't actually come out during his lifetime, maybe not till many years later. He died in 2019, as I recall, and WWE Network did a whole tribute documentary to him, which I thought was nice. But Patterson, he always had these gay mannerisms, and I'm not against gay people. I love the LGBTQ community, and so kudos for him for, staying true to who he is. So Patterson had a lot of fun in this match because he got to dress up in drag, which I'm sure he always wanted to do. Briscoe was no better in the drag. He was a little more conservative, but be that as it may. So they each come out. Patterson's wearing this red dress, and he has this blonde wig. It looks so ridiculous. White knee socks and white sneakers. And Patterson comes out to this stripper music that goes da 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 da. They used to play that music during strip teases back in like 2000. It's actually a real song called The Stripper by David Rose. It's an orchestration. And Briscoe is wearing all black like he's a witch for Halloween. And he looks terrible. And basically it's just a strip fest. They're tearing off each other's clothes. They're using fire extinguishers and trash cans and lids. Finally, Crash Holly saves the day because of the 24/7 rule. And I think he pins Patterson because Patterson's the defending champion and finally wins this match. So neither Patterson or Briscoe walked out hardcore champion. It was Vince McMahon of all people who set this up because he caught the two brawling backstage and fighting like two little girls. And he decided to do this, set them up in this match as punishment. Now, Pat Patterson in real life was Vince McMahon's right-hand man. He's also he was Stephanie McMahon's godfather too. Stephanie's his goddaughter. So he's very close with the McMahons, and I know Vince probably wouldn't do anything to hurt Pat Patterson. So Patterson didn't agree with it. He most likely wouldn't have gone with the angle. Briscoe was also a close confidant, but not as close as what Patterson was to Vince. So, wow, that match was bad. This next one, we're going to go in even more detail, but no hardcore action in this one. Unforgiven 2001, coming off the heels of 9/11, a very sentimental pay-per-view with some patriotic undertones. The Brothers of Destruction, Undertaker and Kane defend their WCW Tag Team Championship against Chronic, Bryan Adams and Brian Clark. No, not the Bryan Adams, Summer of '69. Or what's that other one? Heaven, that he sings. I remember when I first heard Heaven, it was from DJ Sammy, but then I finally discovered Bryan Adams later on, but that's just me growing up. We were in the midst of the invasion, folks, the WCW Tag Team Championships. They've been inactive since November 2001. Dudleys were the last champions. So, Chronic, they were two-time WCW Tag Team Champions, and they kind of held the tag team division together until in WCW's dying days. Bryan Adams, as we remember, was Crush in WWF. Brian Clark was Adam Bomb. So they had a history of being in the WWF, mostly new generation competitors, mid-90s. Undertaker and Kane were hitting their stride as the Brothers of Destruction. Kane was starting to show more of a human side, although still with the mask on and everything and not talking as much, so Taker did most of the talking. A lot of people say this is one of the worst matches ever, but I beg to differ. It's bad, but it's not as bad as you remember it. I just watched it last night so I could actually analyze it, so I'm going to overanalyze it here. Get ready. For starters, neither team gets in the ring, but the bell still sounds. I'm not a big fan of the bell sounding when the competitors aren't in the ring. They like to break tradition now, but it would just make sense to create some sort of realism here, kind of I was talking about, at least try to make it real if you can. So yeah, the match finally started on the outside. Bryan Adams was very rough around the edges physically. He looked like he hadn't been in the ring in like 10 years. That's how bad he looked. His knees looked very stiff. He'd been inactive since March of that year, before WCW got bought out. The impact of Bryan Adams' spots looks so rough. It's like a crash landing there. The way he performed a lot of these maneuvers, they were so botched. Brian Clark, on the other hand, looked more well-rounded in the ring than Adams, but he still left something to be desired. He left something to be desired because I remember him being a somewhat better worker in his Adam Bomb days. But that's not saying much. He's no Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels in the ring. Come on, let's not kid ourselves. But he could have done better. If Kane is not given the right people to work with, his spots end up looking blah. Ugh, terrible. I've seen some bad Kane matches, and there's far worse ones than this one. But Kane, if he's given the right people to work with, can actually have a great match. Kane is a great character. Glenn Jacobs was never the best worker, but if the right person can sell for him and can work with him in the way that he works, then it's golden. The crowd becomes very dead halfway through the bout, too. That's another thing. If the crowd is not reacting, you're not doing your job. And the action was clunky all around, too. So, mercifully, it was over, and Taker and Kane saved this match. Chronic, I forgot to mention, were accompanied by Steven Richards. Stevie Richards, who was still Steven at the time. Steven Richards was upset that the Brothers of Destruction were the reason that the Right to Censor had disbanded in April of that year. So he came back, instead of his black and white Geek Squad-looking attire from Right to Censor, he's in all black. He dyes his hair jet black. So Stevie's really rocking the whole black motif. So it's a one-star match. One star is not great, but certainly better than a dud. The rest of these matches were duds. I'm about to talk about some more duds in a little bit, so we'll move on from that match. Let's go to 2002, and this match took place on Raw, July the 8th of 2002. I believe they were in Philly that night. Bradshaw and Trish Stratus competing in mixed tag team action. Their opposition is Christopher Nowinski and Jackie Gayda. Yes, it is that Jackie Gayda match. And I have to put it in quotes because that's actually what it's called. Go look it up on Google, YouTube, WrestleCrap. They have a whole induction on it. Christopher Nowinski was a runner-up on Tough Enough. I think he should have won over Maven just because he had more of a... I thought he had more charisma as far as being a better talker was concerned. But that didn't happen, but he eventually got signed, so he took an alternate route with coming to WWE, not winning Tough Enough, going through OVW like they all should. Jackie Gayda won Tough Enough, and I think she won based on the fact that she didn't give up in the competition despite having a torn ligament, ACL tear, torn meniscus, whatever. And yeah, she didn't. The trainers wanted her to go home, but she said, "I don't agree with that. I'm going to stay." Lo and behold, she won. So Jackie was nowhere near ready for the big time. You're putting her on live Monday Night Raw. That's a big deal for a lot of wrestlers, as it should be. So Jackie kept missing spots. They were mistimed. Clotheslines, bulldogs, drop kicks. JR on commentary was trying so hard to be affable here. Bless her heart, she's really trying, but these new guys and gals, you can tell they're very green, rough around the edges, very green in that ring. Mercifully, it was over, and Trish, I think, won with like Stratisfaction or something, and Jackie rightfully got sent back to OVW, that's Ohio Valley Wrestling. That was their training facility in Louisville, Kentucky. Why do you have a facility called Ohio when you're in Kentucky? Beats me. But yeah, Jackie never really improved much. She did better as a valet and manager, but in the ring, it just, what you saw in Tough Enough 2 did not necessarily transcend into, Monday Night Raw, onto Monday Night Raw or SmackDown for that matter, and it didn't show what she could do, showcase in the ring. So, she was really only winning based on that, heroic story of the bad knee and overcoming adversity, and that's really it for Jackie. And that's not to say she's a bad person, but there's nothing bad about her character, but, she just didn't prove herself in the ring like she should have, and this match is a perfect example of that. She ended up marrying Charlie Haas, whom she managed a couple of years later, and then they got divorced in 2020, I think. They opened up a bed and breakfast together, a wrestling school. Anyways, we're going to fast forward now a year later, but this is only like 6 months later because it was the beginning of 2003. The Royal Rumble of 2003. World Heavyweight Championship, Triple H defending against Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner in Steiner's debut match for WWE under the Big Papa Pump persona. So, Scott Steiner was previously in WWF as the Steiner brothers, him and Rick, two-time tag team champions. Steiner had a bad ankle going into this match. He hadn't been in the ring for almost 2 years, so of course there's going to be a lot of ring rust. I'm not sure he even trained. Steiner had an ankle that I'm not sure he ever got fixed, or maybe he did years down the road, but it affected him. When he was jumping up to the apron to do his signature pose, he had trouble doing it. Kind of a little hiccup like I just did. And Steiner, he wasn't really green, but he was so limited. As he got bigger and bigger, his muscles, like look at my muscle here, this is about average. I think it had to do with a lot of the roids. His bicep came all the way up to here. So I think that kind of slowed him down, those roids there. Big muscle-bound guy, but that's about all he could show. And a good talker, not a great talker, because he's known for botching. If you ever listen to Scott Steiner versus the English Language on YouTube, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. So Scott Steiner, all he could do in that match for 18 long, god-awful minutes were simply belly-to-belly suplexes. And it was the same old thing time and time again. You have to freshen up your moveset. I'll get bored just watching you do the same old goddamn move over and over again. He was easily winded, too. His conditioning left a lot to be desired. Conditioning is such an important part. If you're getting so winded just doing a simple move like that, or you should be above doing belly-to-belly suplexes, then there's something wrong here. I'm sorry. Bless Triple H for trying to make this match look halfway decent. I don't think Hunter really liked him that much after this match. Hunter tried to sell as best he could, and his offense was hell of a lot better than what Scott Steiner was putting on. And I think the match ended in DQ. Scott Steiner got a DQ win, but his first match shouldn't have been for the World Heavyweight Championship. I'm talking about Scott Steiner. It should not have been for the World Heavyweight title. He should have had a match prior to that, or at least should have worked his way up. I know he was a big star in WCW, and I know Vince at the time was trying to bury any guy who had any semblance of WCW, and same with Triple H, and he's using his son-in-law as a pawn in this scheme. But come on, the guy could have gotten something better, because after that, he didn't appear at WrestleMania 19. It's still a mystery to me, and I think it had something to do with the two bad matches. He had this one match at Royal Rumble 2003, and then, of course, No Way Out 2003. That was okay, but not much better. Then all of a sudden, he's in a tag team with Test, and he's feuding with La Resistance and guys like Rico. And anyways, things didn't work out too well for Scott Steiner in WWE come late 2003, early 2004. Early 2004, he was out of the company. That's the last we ever saw of him. Thank God for Braun Breaker, his nephew. He's doing so great. All right, this next match I watched also last night, just like I watched the Chronic match. Unforgiven 2004. This was an impromptu bonus match. Sometimes they make matches on the fly, whether it's a TV show like Raw or SmackDown or a pay-per-view like Unforgiven. Tyson Tomko versus Stevie Richards now. He eventually went back to Stevie. Tyson Tomko versus Stevie Richards. And this came off the heels of a women's title match that happened just prior to this match. Trish Stratus successfully defended her women's title against Victoria in a decent match. Victoria and Stevie Richards were once an item. You know, both very psychotic, and Victoria was coming out to the ring with tattoos, All the Things She Said. Remember that song? Still great. And Stevie decided to dress up in drag as a mystery woman. This was in June of 2004. So this angle had been running for about 3 months prior to Unforgiven. Stevie had on a dark red maroon-colored wig, that with long bangs so it could cover his face. And he had on a red halter top. No, it was a long dress top. Red long sleeve shirt over a black halter top, and then had on a long black skirt and some black shoes to go with it. You know, a little slip-on, good-looking slip-on shoes for dressy occasions. Anyways, enough about me talking about fashion. As this mystery woman gets in the ring, and Tomko calls him out and calls him a hermaphrodite, which I don't think you can get away with in this day and age. So the language was still some vulgarity there, but say what you will. And, oh my God, this match was another, just like the Hardcore Evening Gown match, it was just a strip fest. So basically, Tomko is taking off Richards' clothing, and Richards just flailing around. A lot of sloppy acting. The punches don't even look real. You're supposed to flinch back with a punch, but they're just kind of like slapping each other around like this. A A lot of crotch grabbing, too. I think at one point, Stevie goes for Tyson's crotch and grabs it. Oh, I don't need to see that. And the crowd is dead. They're chanting boring. They're chanting God knows what. They're in Portland, Oregon this night. So maybe they're chanting for the Trailblazers. Who the hell knows? And mercifully, it's over after 7 minutes. They're just lying around doing nothing. At this point, I'd rather see two old ladies slap each other than watch this match again. It was so painful. It's actually hilarious because they're not even trying. Maybe in their minds they know that this match is going to suck, so they make it bad for the rest of us. But that's not fair. Come on. So, a funny story, my brother, because he worked for WWE in the auction department, he got Stevie Richards' dress autographed, and it said, "I'm sorry, Victoria," because I think he wanted to get back together with Victoria on storyline. Obviously, that didn't work out, because there was nothing came of this at the end. Stevie went his separate way, Victoria went her separate way, and so did Trish Stratus and Tyson Tomko. He was the problem solver. He went back to Christian. I think there was a whole argument with Christian and Trish. He's my problem solver, not yours. Tyson Tomko didn't do much to impress me. Same in TNA when he was just Tomko. So yeah, that match sucked. It's hilarious to watch, but also very painful at the same time if you catch my drift. Alright, I don't have much more to talk about here. 2005, we're going to make this one quick. Survivor Series 05, Teddy Long, Eric Bischoff. They're not wrestlers, so they shouldn't have been wrestling. Boogeyman helped Teddy Long win. That was that. I'm not going to talk about that one anymore. Edge versus Triple H versus Vladimir Kozlov is the worst worked match for Survivors for 2008. This is Survivor Series 2008. And it started out as it was supposed to be a triple threat match with Jeff Hardy, but then they had that tasteless angle where Jeff Hardy passed out or was found unconscious in a stairwell. And I remember Jim Ross and Taz, who were commentating for SmackDown, the SmackDown portion of the show at the time. JR takes off his glasses, and it's serious. Jeff Hardy was found unconscious in a stairwell earlier today, and unfortunately is not going to be making it to the show. And they're treating it like, as if it was a real death, or that somebody really did legitimately, collapse in a stairwell. And that can happen, with the drugs and the steroids. Not steroids so much, but, the various drugs and painkillers that all these wrestlers are on. Shit like that actually happened in real life. So that's what made it so tasteless. And they're making a joke out of something that many people have suffered from. So when you make a joke out of something a lot of people suffered from in real life, then it's crossing the line. I'm sorry. That was also the most disgusting promotional tactic. Another great award, which we'll talk about in another video. So it started out, we thought it was just going to be a singles match for the WWE title. Triple H defending against Vladimir Kozlov. It was very green, not even ready. He had a good look, but couldn't back it up in the ring too well. I love double E. That's how he started out, and then he became the Moscow Mauler. Kozlov and Triple H were just having the most basic of basic matches. And the crowd was chanting, boring, boring, in Boston. That's where they were that night. So Vicky Guerrero, the GM of SmackDown at the time, comes out and announces, he's here! And we all thought it meant Jeff Hardy. I'm like, thank God, Jeff, we need you in this match. Then you hear, you think you know me. Edge and Metalingus playing. So Edge returns from a 3-month hiatus. I guess he was injured after that Hell in a Cell match at SummerSlam with Undertaker. Finally spears Triple H to win the match, and Jeff comes out in his street clothes. And Edge finally wins the match and the belt, and that match is a dud because of how unorganized it was. It was just convoluted mess all around, and when a match gets so convoluted, it makes it hard to follow. 2010's worst work match of the year is Caitlyn versus Maxine from NXT Season 3 on October the 19th of 2010. Both were very green. They were rookies on that show, rookie divas at the time. It was all women for NXT Season 3. And Caitlyn's pro was Vicky Guerrero, who was at ringside, and Maxine's pro was Alicia Fox. Now, the pros were mic'd, as if they needed to have microphones on during the match. So that didn't help that they were shouting, especially Vicky. Eee! You hear her screeching. Caitlyn, oh my God, was so green. Maxine did a little bit better, but Caitlyn got better years later. Celeste, whatever you want to call her. The headlocks look bad. The drop toe holds look bad. The takeovers look bad. Every move in every which way conceivably, it just looks sloppy all around is all I can say. I watched that match not long ago as I'm still watching NXT Season 4, but I had to take a break so I could catch up on some of these matches. That's all I'm going to say about that match. Cena Laurinaitis from Over the Limit 2012 was 2012's worst work match of the year. John Cena versus John Laurinaitis. John Laurinaitis hadn't wrestled a match since 2000, which was the year he retired, and he was never over in the USA because he spent 10 years in Japan from 1990 to 2000. So he was big in Japan, but not in the US. And it didn't help that he talked like this either. A lot of people made fun of John Laurinaitis. At the Over Limit pay-per-view, John Cena, I'm gonna make sure you get fired after this match. Or he said something like that. So Cena was just badgering Laurinaitis and just toying with him, even at the announce desk, and they were all over the place till Big Show finally KO'd Cena and got his job back and that whole storyline. So that's where I'm going to end on this one. I knew it was going to be bad, but I actually like John Laurinaitis in charge. He actually was an interesting character for that short time, but he's one of the most hated men in pro wrestling, even more so with the whole sex scandal, Janelle Grant. He's involved in that with McMahon. I think he's been acquitted now. I'm not sure, but Laurinaitis is out at WWE, has been for the last 2-3 years. Last match I'm going to talk about brings us to 2021 from WrestleMania Backlash from May 16th of 2021. We were in the Thunderdome. We hadn't gotten clearance yet from the DPH or CDC to go back to arenas and having people sit shoulder to shoulder with each other because we were still in the midst of COVID. The Miz versus Damian Priest. Oh my God, I hated watching that match. They actually had zombies walking to the ring. I think they were trying to copy The Walking Dead or something like that. Now, I don't watch The Walking Dead, so if I don't watch it, don't go crazy on me over it. If I don't get the references, there's a lot of fans that are diehard about this stuff, just like I am about wrestling. To each their own. So there were all these zombies coming to the ring. It was overly theatrical. It was a cinematic match, and they had to do a lot of that because you didn't have a live crowd. So I get where they were coming from. Miz and Damian Priest, it's a case of them not trying very hard. Miz deserved better than this. Actually, Priest did too, because he himself has gotten better in the ring and on promos. He's definitely a rising star in this day and age. Damian Priest is, exceeding the Judgment Day. Miz should have been thrown a bone and not had to compete in such an atrocious match, but I guess, I don't know, maybe he was in trouble backstage or something, or creatively they thought it was a good idea. And Vince was still in charge, so a lot of the stupid shit was still happening when Vince McMahon was running the show. It was all in dark, too, so you can't see the match when it's completely dark. So I don't like when they turn the lights off. I didn't even like it when they did that for Sin Cara's matches. I know they were trying to do the whole dramatic effect of him competing in the dark, wearing a mask, full-blown. But it just doesn't work for me, I'm sorry. It's a distraction. So, that covers all, it doesn't cover every single worst worked match of the year, but go on Wikipedia and look under list of Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards, and you can see other companies that had other bad matches, and maybe you want to comment on them. We'll see. So, this has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.